Hello, I'm Catherine Sines, the president of the Rotary Club of Hudson. Rotary is a professional organization of a group of men and women who support Rotary International. We also join together by a common interest of service to our Hudson community, and we have a sincere desire to give back. We meet weekly on Wednesdays at Laurel Lake Retirement Community, 200 Laurel Lake Drive, in their dining room. We meet from 7:30 to 8:30 and would like to invite you to join us. For more information about Rotary, go to www.rotaryhudson.org. Enjoy the following excerpts from one of our recent meetings and consider joining us on Wednesday morning.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests.
Good morning.
Welcome to the Rotary Club of Hudson. I'm Ron Strobel, the Sergeant at Arms. Our invocation this morning is by Liz Ramsey.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
We are so blessed, and we should thank God that we weren't born in the Congo or the slums of India. We at Rotary are a blessing to others. Recently, I heard that we own 40% of the world's silver, operate 40% of the world's railroads, possess 50% of the world's gold, use 50% of the world's electricity, control 60% of the world's copper, and enjoy 85% of the world's automobiles. Let's pray. Thank you, God, for creating this country and blessing the United States to serve and give also to the whole world. We have freedom to govern ourselves with liberty and with a virtuous faith. Thank you for blessing us with such abundance and your protection for ourselves, our families, friends, servicemen and women, and our leaders. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Amen.
To lead us in the pledge and the four-way test, Peter Opperman.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
You would join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to this republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Four-way test. First,
Is it true?
second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
third,
Will build goodwill and friendships?
and fourth.
Will be beneficial to all concerned?
Thank you. And to lead us in song, Dick Pearsall.
All right. A little over 100 years ago, 1915, Felix and George Powell decided they needed to write a song for the Doughboys in World War I. And they came up with, pack up your troubles. And the thing about it, they copyrighted it, and in years after that, they made millions of dollars. So this little ditty is not as bad as you think. Let's give it a try. Okay. And we go, pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. While you Lucifer delight your bed, why boys, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in the old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. We'll get larger words one time.
So, Dick, say, hey Dick, I think the problem is somebody added extra words to the song. Now our president, Catherine Sines.
Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning.
I was glad to be back. I had a wonderful time in the Grand Canyon. In case you didn't miss me, I was gone. So just to try. First, I'm going to call on Chris Barker to introduce our guest.
Good morning, Rotarians and guests. If the guests could please rise as I introduce them. Joining us for the second, third, fourth time, we have Richard Nebolo, sorry about that. And he's a guest of... Guest of Doug McDowell. And then we have Rebecca Moore. Thank you for joining us again. Yay. Thank you. And we also have a guest joining us. He's president-elect of the Kent Rotary, Larry Lohman. So thank you for joining us today. And Catherine, yes, we missed you.
I'll get that out there. We have a couple people that want to come up and do a few announcements this morning, and first is Joe Zapodowski. Zapodowski?
Didn't get that right.
Joe Z. You're just Joe Z. No, he's just going to be Joe Z.
We'll have to have a private coaching session on the name. Good morning, Rotarians.
Good morning, Joe.
Hey, we've got another deal today, have we, boy? We got 3 guys who are going to join the Paul Harris Fellow Plus One group. The presentation of Paul Harris Fellow recognition pins is the Rotary Foundation's way of expressing its appreciation for a substantial contribution to its many programs that help people around the world. It's named, as you know, for our founder, Paul Harris, who with 3 others helped found Rotary back in 1905. Today we have the honor and pleasure of recognizing George Snyder, Ron Strobel, and Tom Tobin. And gentlemen, if you would please join me here at the podium. A world of peace and goodwill comes closer to reality today as the monetary contributions made by George, Ron, and Tom are used by our international foundation to do good where needed around the world. She's preempting me. I mean, I didn't even ask you to do that.
Just keep reading. Just keep talking. Just keep doing it.
She needs more coaching.
She's so
than-
flustered by the name still.
He asked me to pin you while he spoke.
No, go ahead, please.
You keep talking.
Gentlemen, please wear these symbols of your dedication to service above self proudly. We have in our club some 88% who contribute to Rotary International, and 38% are Paul Harris Fellows Plus One, and Plus Two. Gentlemen, please accept our congratulations and sincere,
Maybe.
your plus ones, yes. Sincere thanks for your commitment to our common goals of world understanding and peace. Paul Harris Fellows in the audience, please rise and welcome these gentlemen to Paul Harris Fellows Plus One.
Plus one.
Gentlemen, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zapatowski.
Hey, you want
Hey,
the box?
that's good.
Thanks, Joe.
Do you want the box?
Pleasure.
Sure,
George,
thank
do you
you.
want the box?
Yes, of course.
We're going to work on that. Zapatowski.
Joe, you were just a superintendent, not actually.
Actually, what?
You were just a superintendent.
That's all I was.
Yeah, but not a treasurer, so that's
Not a board. James, not a board member. Next, Bob wants to come up and talk to us about Art on the Green.
Good morning.
Good morning, Bob.
I'll be brief. It's Art on the Green time again. I did make a few comments a few weeks ago about that, just to review it for some of the new folks that are here in the past year. We do Art on the Green. We serve we have a brat and hot dog stand with beverages at the Art on the Green, and we need to staff that. And we don't sell art, we sell beverages and hot dogs and brats. So more details than that of where to go and things like that, I'll get that out to the new people at that time. But I need you folks to sign up again, like always. And I have the sign-up sheet. And this time, I'm going to start it over that way. For the past 3 years, I started it here. So I'm going to start it on the other side and let people sign up. I have a few people who already approached me prior to today, and I got their names on here. So yeah, hopefully we'll fill this up today. Appreciate your help, appreciate your involvement, and hope we can pull this all together.
I think he said that because when I first joined Rotary, I thought we were going to sell art on the green. I really did. When I get there, and we're selling hot dogs and brats. Dave Basil has a couple more gifts to give out and thank yous.
Thanks, Catherine. At the annual dinner a couple of weeks ago, recognized Rotarians who had significant leadership roles in the club and devoted a lot of extra time. A couple of those people were not able to be present at that time. So I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize and thank Jim Ahern. Jim's been on the board of directors, heads up the speech contest, and is the captain of captains.
Thank you. Thank you. Awesome.
And Jim Lang. Jim participated in the gala committee, was instrumental in a fantastic event. So Jim, I'd like to thank you and recognize your efforts as well.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks, Catherine.
Open door. Yeah.
It's the nice thing about getting a thank you because we all do it together. It takes all of us to run this club. And Larry Lohman from the Kent Rotary Group would like to come up and say a few words. Then it's your turn. Okay.
Good morning. I guess I've already been introduced. On top of being with the Kent Rotary Club, I also sit on the District Grants Committee. And we do a lot of global grants and a lot of local grants throughout the district. This past year, Governor Jim McKee came to the cluster and asked for the cluster to each club donate $300 towards a water project in El Salvador, which is for a village called El Rodeo. That water grant, that global grant, is sponsored by the Rotary Club of Kent. And I'm trying to get out to all the clubs who have committed funds and thank them, for those funds. Bringing water to the world is, one of the goals of Rotary. It's one of our 6 areas of focus. Down in El Salvador, 98% of all the water resources are polluted. So by bringing fresh water into a village that's never had running water, and bringing sanitation stations, which it runs through, giving them clean water, it tremendously helps the village. It allows students to go to school. It allows the women to be able to earn money for the household, and allows the men to be in the fields a lot longer. So I would like to thank you very much for the generous contribution. Also, an invitation down to El Salvador in October 27th through November 3rd or 4th. We are having a delegation trip as well as a water conference that will show how to sustain water projects not only in El Salvador but also Nicaragua and throughout Central America. So we'd like to invite you down to that as well. I have some flyers and I'll give them to your president here to disperse. My contact information is on the bottom. The trip itself is it's $1,000. That includes your housing, transportation, and food while you're in El Salvador. And then airfare on top of that. Airfare, what I'm seeing as of last night, is about $650. Is the best pricing I've seen so far. So Anybody interested, please get in touch with me. We are trying to get all preliminary numbers of people going down in by August 1st. I know it's a short time period between now and then, but I can only get out so many clubs each week. So this is my 4th club this week, and I still got 2 more to go tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Larry. The next thing on the agenda is our speaker, and Dan Filburn will introduce them.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm pleased to introduce Joe Lutz, who's our speaker this morning from Sarah's Vineyard. Many of you are familiar with Sarah's Vineyard. It's across from Blossom Music Center. Joe's assistant winemaker at Sarah's and has been with them since its inception. He told me he helped plant the vineyard, construct the facility, and has a lot of other duties. Joe's a retired teacher and coach at North High and also coached at Hoban, football and track. He's a Marine Corps veteran from Vietnam. Joe also brought a guest on Ross, also works at Sarah's. He's a bartender at Sarah's and former coach and assistant principal at Cuyahoga Falls and Woodbridge. And he and Catherine shared old stories over here from Cuyahoga Falls. They worked together. So, Don, thank you for coming. Joe, thank you for coming, and please welcome Joe.
Thank you, Dan. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to have a little problem. I already have it. I'm looking at the 4-way test over there. First item, I was planning on telling a few lies, you know, so don't hold it against me. Now, basically what I was going to do was I'm going to tell you a little bit about Sarah's Vineyard, how it came to be. I also brought some wine. Now, I realize it's early in the morning. A lot of people have to go to work. So if you don't partake, I understand that. I brought 3 kinds. I figured you might as well see what we do. How many have been there to Sarah's? Oh, pretty good. Wow, very good. How many people have been to Napa Valley, some of the big wineries, or Sonoma?
That's on my bucket.
Well, this ain't it. So we do things a little different. Anyway, Don is, I don't have a PowerPoint or anything. We're rather primitive. Don is passing out just a page of photos, so if you haven't been there, you'll have an idea of what we're talking about in the stages we went through. Sarah started actually in, the concept started in 1999. At that time, there were 1.4 million visitors that year to the Cuyahoga Valley, with virtually nowhere to go other than the bike and hiking trail. Fisher's, what's the other place there? Winking Lizard. That was essentially it. Well, the federal government came up with the Cuyahoga Valley initiative, country initiative, and basically what they wanted to do and what they wanted to accomplish was bring people back to the valley and create some sustainable farming. So what they did, they took 5 farms, put them up for bid, and it's happened again since a few, but I'll briefly tell you what the plan was. You write a proposal, which you know I was involved in. a business plan, environmental plan, education plan, every kind of plan you can imagine. It looked like a doctoral thesis. It was about this thick. Anyway, you would live in the farmhouse, and the farmhouses were rather primitive. You know, most of them were around 1,000 square feet. They fixed them up mechanically, but not aesthetically. You know, they were part of the land, so there was nothing fancy. And you paid essentially, I believe it was $300, maybe $400 a month to live there. You used the land for whatever, but part of the deal was after you were making a profit, and it was a progression, after you were turning a profit, which hopefully, you know, they all did, it didn't turn out to be the case, the government would take up to 10% of the gross. So, Michael and Margaret Litz, the owners of Sarah's, Michael, we were all coaches together. Michael was an Akron public school teacher, about to retire then, and his wife Margaret was a nurse, intensive care nurse at City Hospital, and she was a ceramic artist. And she held some huge sales every year. She did it once a year at their home on Bath Road. And Michael was a home winemaker, basically. So the plan was, him and I talked, and he was telling me about it. He says, I think we could do this. I said, oh, you can do that. That sounds good. I was getting ready to retire, sooner than him, in fact. Anyway, they wrote a proposal, and it was accepted. So it started in 2000. And they put the 5 farms up. We're across the street from Blossom. That would have been the only farm that would have been possible for grapes. The rest of them were down by the river. Grapes don't like water. They like drought and misery. You know, the best vintages come when there's a drought, you know. Hence my attraction to them. You know, you'll see that later on what I was talking about. So, it started then, and we planted the grapes. We planted 4 acres. The farm itself was 64 acres, but it's kind of divided up. There's some down past Blossom across the street, some over the hill, and not much of it was plantable. And this was probably the section that was the easiest to do. So we planted 4 acres by hand. I think it was 1,400 plants. And there wasn't anybody around other than some friends, Don and you know these other coaches. And you know, like I said, we were North Hill Italians and home winemakers. My experience was making wine with my grandfather, but I never planted anything. I'll get into that a little more later. But we planted them, 9 varieties, mostly hybrids, clones, because our situation down here is unlike even up at the lake, which is not that far away, the lake effect, and the restrictions that we have being in the park. Before we could do anything, they had a team of geologists come down with aids, and I think it was about 14 people, and they were here for about 6 days, and they were digging holes, I think it was every 50, 60 feet, digging about 18 inches deep and then sifting through it. And had they found any Indian relics or anything like that, you don't plant in those areas. And they covered that whole 4 acres where we planned on putting the building and everything else. So there are a lot of restrictions as like a private winery. If we see something, some kind of mold or any kind of disease starting on our plants, well, technically we have to call Nebraska get permission to spray, and you could wipe the crop out in no time, whereas a private concern, boom, it's done right now. And we have to use, chemicals that are approved, mostly organic, like copper sulfite, stuff like that. We're on clay, which is terrible for grapes because clay acts like a sponge, essentially. And I told you before, they don't react that well when they're wet all the time, especially in this area. A private concern would have drain tile, but we're not allowed to do that to the environment there. So anyway, back to the initiative. That's how this got started. The other farms, one guy was raising free-range chickens. Another guy was raising goats. I don't know what you do. They put a fence up and they kind of raise themselves. Another guy was an organic type farm, and I think he pretty much made a go of it. And there was another guy, the fifth farm. He did absolutely nothing. I think he lived there about 6 years and never hit a lick. He was living for $400 a month, and I believe that he was replaced. I know he was, in fact. And I think you've got somebody, Dan, like next week or your next meeting, or someone from the Conservancy coming. You'll learn more about it. Anyway, so we got them planted. In 2004, we started putting the building up. Now, Michael had purchased an 1840s post and beam barn. This barn was on 224 West, across the street from Cloverleaf High School. And they tore it down, and there's a guy somewhere out in Macedonia area who buys these things and puts them up. Well, it sat, I don't know, for 3 years. The beams are all hand-hewn. It's a gorgeous building. If you look at that tasting room, you can see, I don't know if you can tell that the beams are hand-hewn, but it's a beautiful piece of work. Anyway, we had the foundation done, and here we're football coaches and teachers, don't know much, and first time it rained, the water just poured in. I mean, leaks. The water was this deep, and when you're operating on a shoestring budget, setbacks like that, we know. The guy, he didn't put any gravel in, so we had to have it all dug out and redone. Anyway, the mountain man comes and he's putting up the beams and everything, and the beams are, they're all interlocked, mortise and tenon. And it was kind of snowing, and we had to dig away from the foundation for them to repair it, so they couldn't get a crane in. And this guy did it with two other people on a block and tackle. And he's walking on these, he had wild hair sticking out like this. It's kind of like me. It was out there, like this. Anyway, he's walking and he's smoking. He was out of his mind, and we were standing there. This guy's he's gonna go down, but he didn't. And he got it up in 3 days. It was amazing how they did it. I'd never seen it before. Anyway, it took us another 2.5 years to finish the project, and we finally got it open in 2007. So essentially, we were making wine every year, but there was nothing coming in. So you're talking almost 7 years, but nothing at all coming in. Like I said, we have four acres planted with the intent on planting more. We use everything that we grow. First couple years, I think we did like a ton, and a ton will make about 150 gallons. So we made 300 gallons, and experimenting, because all we made was, you know, the North Hill Italian wine. Prior to that, hadn't really experienced too much with sweet wines. And there's an old guy up, we bought some tanks up at the lake, and bought them from a guy, he was going out of business, he was retiring, and he said, hey, I know you guys are Italians, you like the big reds, but sweet wines pay the rent. Because most people aren't wine drinkers, you know, per se. It's changed. And the sweet wines, you know, they sell. They sell. Our biggest seller is a sweet wine that, you know, I'm not fond of, but I love the fact that it sells, you know. You know, that's wonderful. In fact, you guys are going to taste it. I don't know how we're going to do this, Donnie. They don't want to. No, they don't want to get. They don't want to get up. You walk around. In fact, we could start that while I'm still telling lies. Okay. You want to go sweet to dry or dry to sweet? Sweet. Okay. Hey, Dr. We're going to go sweet first. Hey, pass the 2 bottles of Mizadab around, and I can tell the story about how that happened to be. Start one over here and one over there, if you would. Just pass this around. We'll drink this last. My face is on this bottle, and the wine is called Mizadab, or Miserable. Some of you can probably already tell that I earned the title, you know, but I wanna explain that. I told you we're planting the grapes. There's no money, right? So it's like 90 degrees out. If you look closely below that, below the label, and below my picture, it's got handcrafted for those who like to drink alone. So he got me back, and I'll tell you why. So it's really hot. We were so skilled, we used a big garden hose to make a straight line, and we're digging the holes. It's him and I that day. And, you know, I told you I had made wine with my grandfather, but I'd never planted anything. Well, he says, move that over 4 inches. Well, I just dug a hole 18 inches deep, move it over 4 inches, I'm digging another one. You know, as I said, no money, and I'm bored to death. So I start messing with him for my own entertainment. I'm sick. I've got heat stroke. I'm gonna pass out. I'm tired. Let's go home. I'm thirsty, over and over, till he went nuts, which is what I wanted. Well, he finally did go crazy, and I was happy, but he went nuts and he threw the hands. He said, you are the worst SOB, the most miserable human being I've ever worked with. And we coached for years together, but he said, if we ever get this building up and these grapes ever grow, I'm putting your face on a bottle and I'm calling it Mizadab, which in Italian, and I'm putting, and we're selling it. Well, it would have only been better if the wine was terrible. That would have really been fitting. But anyhow, that's how that one started. I was too stupid to say, hey, give me a nickel a bottle, a little bit of residuals here, you know, but I didn't. Anyway, it's one of our biggest sellers. We started doing food probably the year after we opened. When we opened the original barn and an outside garden area. The garden, it's supposed to be a butterfly garden, and it's actually functional. I guess they come there and reproduce. Some school classes come out there and observe that. I know she spent more on plants one year than we did on grapes. I know that. we're up to 25 employees now. We started with, none, actually. 'Cause, I consider you have to be getting paid to be an employee. I told you we made 1,000 gallons the first couple years. In this past year, we made 14,000 gallons. So the thought of making wine and a little bit of art, that went down the tubes, and then the 16-hour days are what we're looking at. It's a good problem to have, though. I'm not complaining. None of us are. We added a loft, and if any of you, we rent these things out. The loft is unusual. The construction is incredible because there are no nails in it. It's all post and beam construction, and the wood is all non-treated and non-kiln dried, so it's wet, and it shrinks both ways. So the mortises and tenons, and there's pins that are beaten in as this wood is shrinking. Anyway, we found a stand of aspens. Oh, here you go. The loft is what I'm talking about. The beams for that loft are aspen, and they found them in southern Ohio, and it's very unusual because aspen doesn't grow here usually, but they found enough to do that. So you can see the wood and everything we did in this building. You can see like the ceiling and the walls. The walls are rough sawn poplar we bought from the Amish, and we had scaffolding hung outside and nailed it that way. But everything you do, if you want to keep the wood look, you have to do twice. In other words, those walls, once they were up, we had to reframe on the outside, insulate, and then put some siding on. Same with the ceiling, you have to do it twice. I mean, you're not going to take that gorgeous building and put drywall up, There's no drywall companies anymore. Okay, I don't want to offend anybody. All right, but now since we've added a pavilion, the pavilion seats about 200 people. I don't know, is there a picture of the pavilion on that? The fireplace is there. The fireplace, we use the same construction, and the fireplace is big enough where you can throw a Christmas tree in there, which we've done. And we use that pretty much. Now we have plastic and heaters, and we use it year-round. We try to do a lot of reclaimed materials, environmentally. The stonework on that it's West 14th Street, the bridge abutment in Cleveland, all the sandstone. When they tore that down, someone bought it. Michael bought it from him, and the stonework, well, you can see it over there. The stonework is incredible. It's huge. I call him an artist. He's a mason. Joe Colucci out of Cleveland did fabulous work. So that building itself is beautiful also. So, but there are no plans to make any more changes. Every change has to go through Nebraska. So I think we're at our limit. There was some wheeling and dealing to even be able to do that. When I start another thing with the initiative that I didn't tell you. Okay, those buildings are on the property. They weren't there before, right? If he hangs it up, he don't want to do this anymore, whatever. Anything you put on there stays. That's now the parks. That's theirs. So you're making a pretty big commitment, and and you essentially don't own anything. You can't go borrow money on it. You can on the business, but not on the property. So I think we seat like 150 inside the loft. We do a lot of rehearsal dinners, things like that in the loft. showers, baby showers, wedding showers, do a lot of that. And in the pavilion, depending on what time of the year, now that the orchestra is at Blossom, we do a first come, first serve. We don't rent that out. But we do music in the winter. We also had a festival. We just had it in June, our summer solstice, and it's a 3-day event. I think there's a picture of that too somewhere. Anyway, we had 4,500 people over the 3 days, so it's gotten bigger every. There you go. Yeah. We bring food vendors in, and I think like 12, 15 bands, something like that. And our menu it keeps increasing. We didn't want to be in the food business, and we tell people we're not a restaurant, but you can't sit there and drink wine without eating something, and it's gotten bigger. We do a wood-fired pizza, which has been a great success. Sandwiches, salads, things like that. There you go. Yeah. All right. What I want to tell you, how am I doing on time here? 2 minutes? Okay. Are you sure, Don? Or are you just tired of listening to me? We don't get along well. I don't know why. We tend bar together, and it doesn't work out too well. Anyway, we do a couple things that are kind of unique to the industry. I'm not going to get into the winemaking itself. We make everything ourselves in the basement, and when I said 14,000 gallons, we're pretty much at capacity. Now we're going to have a problem. We come close to running out. Our reds, the red wines, the Mizradob and our Zinfandel, we put them in oak barrels. We try to buy 8 barrels every year. An oak barrel gives off 50% of its oak in 1 year. I never knew that till the barrel people showed us that. Of course, they want it. They want that. So, but I know the old Italian guys on North Hill. My grandfather, they used the same barrel for 30 years. It was more of a receptacle. Of course, they didn't leave it in there long enough to get any yolk out of it. My brother and I would be carrying the crates up because he had to burn them on the mound where the fig tree was buried. We had to do that too, and he thought the ashes from the boxes was good. Now he would make it like October, September, October. He was into it by Christmas. There was no. I shouldn't say anything about that because we have yet to have. We wanted to see how would the Mizradob or the Zinfandel taste after a couple years in the barrel. We've never had that luxury. Partly through our own greed, if we got it, well, we'll sell it, But it would have been very interesting to see. We sell everything every year, so. Couple of things quickly that we do. I don't know that they're unique to the industry. The one thing was pretty new. There weren't many wineries in Ohio doing it. We went to a draft system for a variety of reasons. You can see it right there. If you ever drank like a half a bottle of wine and then corked it and then opened it the next day, oxygen gets to it, it's no good. It oxidizes, it doesn't taste the same. First off, you should be ashamed if you did that. I'd be ashamed to admit that. But you can buy a spray, like it's nitrogen actually, and then recork it. It's an inert gas, and it lays on that, and it protects the wine, refurbishes it. Michael went to his grandfather's village in Italy. They went over there on vacation, and he goes into the wine shop. It was up in the mountains, small village, and he says, "Give me a bottle of Merlot." And the guy says, and he has 2 big casks with spigots. I got red, white. He said, "Well, maybe Zinfandel, red, white." Okay, red. Where's your bottle? Well, he didn't sell bottles. He had to go buy a half gallon of water and pour it out. But he was thinking about this. And in the old days, since we're small, we had a process. Donnie was involved, and about 6 other coaches. I think there's something with the wine and the retired coaches. I don't know. Are you interested? Anyway, it was one guy would take the bottles, put them on a thing, they fill. Another guy would use the old cork method. Then another guy was putting labels on them. We'd bring them upstairs, open them. We only have an on-premise license. We could probably get one that we sold in the stores, but we're having a hard time keeping up with, right now. So we haven't done that or pursued it. Anyway, it was very labor intensive. And, the green thing, only 1/3 of glass is actually recyclable. So we had to get rid of the bottles. Anyway, we had some friends of ours that worked in the beer industry, and we're in a draft system now, and we push it with nitrogen. You can also use argon. It's another inert gas. It's much more expensive. So the nitrogen, and what we've done, we only sell bottles to go. We sell it by the carafe now. A carafe is a full liter, whereas a bottle is 750 milliliters. So you're getting an extra glass and a half. So we're passing that on to the consumer. And we thought there would be a problem with that, but everybody seems to like it. One other thing we do, we try not to use, we try to use as little chemical as possible. I'll make a sexist remark. A lot of women, they claim they can't drink red wine because they get a headache from the tannin. Well, there are people that are allergic to tannin, but more often than not, they're getting a headache from the preservative, so from the sulfite. The preservative, that's what usually causes. So, using this system, we don't have to use much, not much chemical. And we tell people, our wines are not classic wines. In other words, that bottle of Miserable is not going to be great in 5 years. We tell them to drink them. In fact, immediately. The faster the better. But they're going to start deteriorating after a couple years. So they're table wines, essentially, okay? And another thing that we do, I hate it, but it's environmentally and for the consumer, it's good. Instead of filtering, we feel that if you filter a whole lot like the big mass producers do, and they have to, I understand that, it takes a lot of character out of the wine. And, you can filter, you can use different chemicals. Michael uses a pretty primitive method. We open the doors in the wintertime. We get it to 36 degrees in there. It's called cold stabilization, and all the particulates kind of coagulate and drop to the bottom of the tank. So it's a natural method. It doesn't make it nice working in there. You're freezing your butt off in there. It's not. That part's not nice. But with the environment, we do use we use a natural filter. It's called bentonite. It's actually a clay product, and you mix it, and it looks like mud, and it goes right in, and I was a phys ed teacher, so, chemically, I don't understand how it works. But it creates a negative charge. And it acts like a magnet, pulls everything out of the wine, and it lays on the bottom. We do use that sometime. Anyway.
People might have some questions.
Yeah, that's what I was going to do now. Anybody have anything? I'll try to answer. Yes?
Do you use only your own grapes, or do you buy grapes?
Oh, we buy grapes. Good point. To make 13,000 gallons, I told you we only have 4 acres planted. 4 acres is not going to do it. You could get 2, maybe 3 tons with ideal conditions and the right trellis system. No, we can't grow. Well, I take it back. We can grow Zinfandel and Merlot. We have a test plot, and they flourish. Problem is, unless it's the proper year, the absolute perfect storm, they won't ripen. Our season's not long enough. Even as opposed to the lake, their system, that's probably, their growing system probably a month longer than ours. So we buy from California. We buy the reds, the Merlot, Sangiovese, Zinfandel, and the Chardonnay from California. We buy the grapes, I forgot how many ton. They come in semis. They're in half-ton boxes, stacked up, and they blow cold air on them. The only grape that we have a problem with is we buy Chardonnay, and they won't sell us the grape because they're so finicky, they won't guarantee the condition. So what they do with them, they crush them and put them in a huge vat, and we blow cold air. The cold air is blown on them the whole way. Then we press them and finish the process. That's the only way they'll guarantee their. And we buy some in New York. We buy quite a bit in New York. A little bit of Traminette we buy in southern Ohio. So, to make 13,000 gallons, we're buying a lot of grapes. But we've never bought any wine, and we don't want to do that, that means we can't get too big, I guess. Yeah.
Tell us about the name.
Oh, Sarah's Vineyard. I started telling her, and then I got interrupted. Donnie interrupted me once again. Now, Michael and Margaret Litz, the owners, it was a second marriage for both of them. Michael had a daughter, and Margaret had a daughter. Margaret's daughter was Sarah, and they were both freshmen at Akron U, and Sarah was killed in an auto accident. That's where the name came, and their thinking on that was, every fall and winter, a vineyard, essentially dies and becomes barren, but it springs to life every spring, and they thought that would be a great remembrance, and it proved to be. Yes?
What would the range of prices for your wines be?
Okay, good, another good question. I'm talking tax out the door. The Mizadab and the, did you do the Riesling yet? Did you do the Riesling? I brought a Riesling too, if you want to taste it. The sweet wines are like that Sweet Elisa. They end up being $14.95. The reds end up being $21.35. So you're in a 15 to 21 something range. Yeah.
Just first of all, a comment. If you think that retired coaches drink a lot, you should see retired athletic directors. But
yeah, do you need any retired?
But anyway, the question.
Okay. No, I remember.
But anyway, the question is.
We have openings.
Yeah. Can you just show up during the hours that you're open, or should one call ahead and reserve?
In the old days, you could just show up. Now, if you want to be specifically inside on a Friday or a Saturday, even during the week, we're closed Monday and Tuesday. To make sure you have a table inside or on the deck, you call for reservations. Like I told you, the pavilion, they don't take reservations. It's first come, first served. We used to allow people to bring food in the picnic area outside, and they stopped that practice this year. Even people bringing, number one, they were trying to bring beer, and they had their food, and they had some kind of chili or whatever, and caught them in the woman's restroom, dumping it, clogged the sinks all the way through, and never bought a thing. And then we found like 30 beer bottles out there, and I think that was the topper for Michael, and he said enough, You don't want to dirty your house, go to a park or something. I don't know. But normally we have no problems. But the reservation, somebody asked about Blossom. Well, it's great. Where would a school teacher and a nurse come up with enough money to buy 64 acres across the street from Blossom? That wouldn't happen. So there's many good things with it. The other farms, I don't know. People they have to make them public accessible. So people can come. Pet the goats. I don't know what they do there, but so that's available to them. I started telling you about Blossom. Blossom can be a help and a hindrance. The orchestra, people are allowed to bring wine in, and it's an older crowd, and they'll come over and have dinner, and then a lot of times buy a bottle and go over to hear the orchestra. Porthouse, the same thing. Blossom, if it's the country people, with the shorts and the cowboy boots, they really aren't wine drinkers, so we don't get that many of them. If it's a kids' concert, rap or that, all that does, it hurts us because people want to get to their reservation and they're stuck all the way out to Route 8 on the on the expressway and can't get there. So, yes and no with it. Yeah.
I like the bell. You didn't talk about the bell. When I was there in the pavilion.
Yeah.
The series game was on, last Indian series was on the TV, and every time they scored, they pulled that bell. It's really a good thing.
That bell, Michael and Margaret bought it. That bell was on the Savannah River Bridge. And I don't know how he came about. He paid dearly for it, but he wanted it and didn't know what we were going to do. Now, we have Browns games outside on a huge screen with a fire, and for every score, and they'll do it with the Tribe games, Cavs also, and we also use it to get people out of there, last call.
Thank you.
All right. Hey, it's been nice talking to you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And if anybody else wants more tasting, Donnie has more wine over there if you want to taste it. One last announcement that we've been asked to make. The office found a jacket, and they think it belongs to our club. It's sitting right here. So if it's yours, take it. If you know whose it is, it's a blue jean jacket. It's a man's large. I want to wrap up and thank everybody. Greeters, Tom Tobin and Ron Barnhurst. Audio visual setup crew, Den Rich, Tom Tobin, James Field, Ron again. You're a busy man this morning, Ron. And Rotabuck. The Rotabuck is $12 and the jackpot's $2.75. The last four numbers is 9900. Chris, is that mine?
It is.
Thank you. Okay, so someone else has to do this. Although I could do it for myself.
By looking.
Wow, what were the chances of that?
I don't know. You're short. Nope. No, it doesn't go back. That's right. There we go. Thank everyone for coming, and thank you for being a Rotarian.